Good morning and welcome. This morning's assembly is twofold. First, we'll honor courageous alumnus with the Distinguished Alumni Award, and second, we'll pay tribute to our founder, Mr. Roland Steele, to recognize what would have been his 130th birthday tomorrow, November 7th. We'll begin our assembly with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please welcome the President of the Student Council, Senior Tyler Perriton, to lead us in the pledge, and after the pledge, please remain standing for the national anthem. Tyler.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, forgot. Thank you.
I'd like to offer a special welcome to our grandparents and friends that are here today. I hope we've given you a peek into your grandchild's daily routine here at Seven, and I also hope that you were able to share your grandchild's creativity, experiences, and accomplishments. I'd not only like to welcome you, but I'd also like to thank you for doing your part in fostering our mission and growing up such wonderful young men and women. The mission of Seven School is it challenges students to pursue excellence in character, conduct, and scholarship, to marshal the courage to lead, and develop the lasting desire to serve and achieve. We believe this is best realized in a community where adults model these qualities and where each student is known and valued. In order for our mission to be alive in the hearts and minds of our students, every adult in the life of a child, teachers, coaches, parents, grandparents, and friends, must uphold the tenets of our mission and make sure that both here, at school, and at home, it guides our actions and relationships. So thank you for your part. And students, please join me in thanking the grandparents and special guests. The Roland M. Steele Distinguished Alumni Award was created by the Severn School Alumni Association to distinguish those Severn graduates who make significant, meaningful contributions to society. Jointly sponsored by the Board of Trustees and the Severn School Alumni Association, this is the highest honor the school can bestow. It recognizes those alumni who have demonstrated outstanding service to humanity, service to community, professional achievement, and service to Severn School. At our opening convocation in September, I focused my remarks on a specific phrase of our mission. That phrase was, to marshal the courage to lead. I talked about how marshaling required the ability to bring together in a clear and organized way the courage that's inside all of us, such that one can act. For acting courageously tends not to happen in a whim. One must emotionally and psychologically prepare to act courageously, because most often the circumstances in which you do have to display courage are difficult or a bit scary. Courage and fear are often linked, as in this quotation from Nelson Mandela. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. The Roland M. Teal distinguished all my awards given this year to a brave man who personified our mission and displayed the courage to lead by being the first African-American student at Severn School. In 1967, Mr. Leroy Sparks marshaled the courage to come to Severn as a 9th grade student, contributed, persevered, and changed Severn School forever. He was a true leader. Mr. Sparks is remembered warmly by faculty and classmates alike for his humor, his wit, but especially for his empathy for those in need. At Severn, he was an honor student, played football, basketball, and lacrosse. After Severn, he matriculated to the University of Pennsylvania and ultimately earned a BS in clinical psychology from Morgan State University and a Master's of Arts in Counseling Psychology from Bowie State University. Early in his career, he worked at Shepherd Pratt Hospital and Baltimore City Department of Social Services as a lead in the Child Protection Unit. He then became Assistant Director of Veterans and Disability Services at the University of Maryland University College, and later found his Sparks Counseling and Consulting. In 2011, he retired due to an illness and unfortunately passed away a year ago yesterday. Throughout his life, Mr. Sparks displayed a rare combination of compassion and courage, which urged those whom he came in contact with to reflect and ultimately change for the better, whether it was an individual he was counseling or a school at a juncture in its history in need of change. Mr. Teal had a hope for every student that walked the halls of Severn, regardless of whether it was in 1914 or 2015. That hope, and these are his words, whatever a graduate undertakes in life must be worth something to others to be worthwhile to the graduate. Mr. Leroy Sparks embodied this hope while at Severn and in the ensuing years by helping scores of underserved adults and young people navigate their lives and the world. 48 years ago, Mr. Sparks stepped foot on this campus and changed Severn School for the better. And it is that reason he's a worthy recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award. To accept the award on his behalf is his wife, Georgie Sparks, who met in the freshman year at the University of Pennsylvania and was married 2 years later. So please join me in congratulating Leroy and welcoming Georgie.
What an auspicious occasion to come and speak on behalf of my husband and our family. And as I look out among you and see the grandparents, he would be so proud to be sitting here with his 3 grandchildren. So if you hear an outburst of Grandma, Ama, Mom, I want you is coming from my grandchildren, who usually are attached to my hip. My 1-year-old, 2-year-old, and 7-year-old are the pride and joy of me as a grandmother, but they were the pride and joy of my husband as their papa. We have 2 lovely daughters who are also here. Last night I made remarks on behalf of my family, and I failed to thank my mother-in-law, Donna Sparks, and her late husband, Vernon Sparks, for having the courage to send their son, their middle son, to this beautiful campus, this home of outstanding learning, not just academics, but social and emotional learning that took place for my husband here, that began 48 years ago. It's in the grand plan of schemes that we honored him last night. I am a member of the Rosewood Sioux tribe from South Dakota, We met and fell in love while we were students at University of Pennsylvania. And those of you who are graduating high school, imagine in 2 to 3 years, you being married and falling in love. It's unknown that people as young as 21 would fall in love and share a life together for 40 years. But we did. My husband always wanted to be the first. And so I'm so proud that he was the first African-American male student here at Severance School 48 years ago when he walked on this campus. He was so proud to be a Severance student. You know, he'd puff up his chest, and when people would say, "Where did you go to school?" he'd say, "I went to Severance." That was a badge of honor for him. So those of you who are here, I know that in your future, you will also puff up your chest and say that you are a graduate of Severance School. My husband is among those who will always puff up his chest in whatever dimension, because he's with us here this morning. There's no doubt in my mind. When Tyler called me this past July, and announced that Roy, or Leroy as many of you know him as, would be receiving this award this morning, he apologized that it would be on or near the date of his passing. I internally chuckled because my daughters and I struggled on how we would end our year of mourning. Among the Lakota, we mourned for a year, and at the end of that year, we hosted dinner. We call it a memorial dinner. And we honor the person that has passed on. And so we struggled because Leroy was not a member of our tribe, but he followed our ways. He respected my cultural traditions. And so when Tyler said it's so close to his passing, I chuckled, and after the call I thanked our Creator. For allowing this occasion to happen so close to his passing. When I shared it with our daughters, they also felt relieved that here we are coming full circle with our traditions. There's a ceremony at home that we go through, and it's called wiping of the tears. That's to end our mourning and to continue on with our lives. It's our belief that at the end of that year, the departed soul is released to join the greater spirit. So last night, I know that Leroy's spirit joined with our Creator fully and unconditionally. So I thank Severance School for nominating him and hosting the dinner last night so that we could come full circle within my family. And going through Roy's papers, because I needed to pull together a resume or something that Headmaster Lagarde could share with you all, I came across many journals of his writings. And one of the entries that I found was in a book that he called A Father's Legacy. So in it, it asks the owner of the book to write his thoughts and experiences. So in the passage that says, who were your favorite teachers? What influence did they have on you? He wrote, Frederick Stewart, Severn School, 9th and 10th grade English. Number 1, taught me to write, which has positively benefited me since that time to the present, especially when reading reports and papers from college classmates that were on an illiterate level as far as I was concerned. And number 2, introduced me to poetry, a most intense form of written communication, brain and emotionally stimulating, approaching one from a multitude of angles with multiple interpretive truths and philosophies. Poetry, not just verse. English was not one of my favorite subjects in high school, but obviously it was my husband's. There are some of you that are probably sitting here also in the same dilemma of loving English. And there are some of you here who probably really dislike writing all those papers. So I sympathize with you. But in the future, you too may say, English was one of your favorite subjects. I know it was my husband's. So I thank you, Severn students, Severn grandparents, Severn staff, the administration, for honoring my husband this year. Thank you.
Please welcome.
Thank you. I guess when Frederick Stewart came here, he was only here for 5 years, so it's fortuitous that he was actually here during the time, the entire time we were there. He was a pain in the butt, but we did learn how to write. I will say that. Again, my name is Kurt Kuhn. I'm one of Roy's friends and fellow classmates at Severn School, where he attended from fall '67 through '71, and I'm honored to be able to speak a few minutes about those times in his era. Given some perspective, Roy came in 9th grade, as we already talked about. We were all 13 or 14, and back then, 9th grade totaled approximately 60 people. A number of returning students were coming from 8th grade, and like Roy, some were new, coming from entering 9th grade. From my perspective back then, Roy was just like us, all of us. We were trying to figure out what was going on a personal level and classroom level, and learning about activities and about your classmates and friends. In addition, Roy, we've already talked about, was the first African-American student to attend Severn. I can only imagine the courage that it took to do that back then. However, in my memory as a student, color was never an issue, nor did it become one. Once started school with us, he and we never looked back. By the way, as a member of our class in '71, as a freshman, he was elected as president, and then later on as a senior vice president. Needless to say, Leroy liked sports. He was a very good athlete, a good team player. He played football, basketball, and lacrosse as a freshman, JV, and varsity years. He was a member of the varsity S Club for 3 years, and he was honored to be selected as MVP of the basketball team in his senior year. He was a natural leader on all these, and on many of the teams, he was the captain. He came to Severn knowing football and basketball, but he learned lacrosse as a 9th grader, started learning lacrosse as a 9th grader. Back then, it wasn't that unusual. Today, you probably have to have 10 years under your belt. I'd like to say that when he finally graduated from Severn, I think the sport that he loved the most, or at least the love to play the most, was lacrosse. Long after his graduation in the year 2000, he was inducted into the Severn School's Athletic Hall of Fame, the only person to do so from our class, the only person likely to do so from our class. And that's quite an honor. Playing different sports was fun and a great release, but like all of us, Roy knew why he was here and successfully balanced school life and sports, academics, and friends with family life. At school, Roy set his academic goals and met them, typically being on the honor roll. His focus was to successfully get through Severn and through college, but never always looked beyond that to the future. Another side of Leroy, when we were seniors, we would often take trips to Georgetown, day trips to Georgetown, just to see what was going on and sort of hang out. One such trip, we went and just went to the George Washington University area. We walked into one of their dorms, and Roy noticed they had a piano over there. Went over there and sat down and started playing beautiful classical music. And the people in the lobby and the two others that were with him just stood there and looked and listened until he finished. It was wonderful. It's kind of embarrassing, but he's so humble. Embarrassing to me, but he was so humble in his own way that I didn't even know he could play the piano. Never mind play it as well as he did. He was such a multi-talented person. Well, this paints a picture of an excellent man, but all was not perfect. And of course, things were a little different back then. And so Roy had a good sense of humor and loved to laugh and goof around too. After all, we were teenagers, and we all, from time to time, earned a demerit too. And I understand we don't get demerits here anymore. We got our share. One example, Chris Taylor, a fellow classmate, reminded me of an incident in chemistry class. And I will say the teacher's name is not here, it's been a long time. His name was Mr. Wolfram. He definitely knew his chemistry, there's no question about it, but he didn't know how to control a class of restless students. And so Chris remembers sitting behind Roy, and he noticed that he was prepared at the spitball, and he's getting ready to flick it forward. And then he flicked it, and lo and behold, it hit Mr. Wolfram right on the forehead. And there was so much laughter coming from the class, and he was so smooth about it that Mr. Wolfram thought it came from Chris Taylor, and he started yelling at him several times, accusing him, and Chris denied it each time. And so meanwhile, Roy, sitting right there, was continued to sit in the chair looking most innocent and never letting on what he had done. It was pretty funny. He didn't do that too often. He didn't do stuff like that too often. But he was a teenager. He was one of us. He has a great memory. Severn was back then an all-men's and all-boys school, as you probably all know. It might have made a difference on how we acted. I'm sure that you all can do that type of thing these days. In summary, while at Severn, Leroy Sparks was a natural leader, a team player, a good student, a gifted athlete, someone who was serious, fun, and had a great sense of humor. He was someone who kept his eye on the big picture and enjoyed the journey of getting there. He was someone who liked being with and doing stuff with his friends and family. From the time I remember meeting him back in 1967, he was well-liked, confident, accepting, respectful, and respected, cool under fire, a person who believed in fairness, and always just one of the guys we could all be so lucky. Roland M. Teal Distinguished Alumni Award is a very prestigious award. Although Leroy passed away a year ago, we continue to celebrate his life. This award is a special tribute to the way he led his life while at Severn and beyond. I know that he would have been highly honored and humbled to receive an award from the school that he was so proud of and loved so much. For Leroy Sparks and to Georgie and the rest of the family, thank you.
We'll now transition to the Founders Day portion of our assembly. First, you will hear from seven students, 6 who will read Mr. Teal's writings and reflections, and 1 who will read a reflection of alumni. After which, we'll have 2 faculty members and 2 students reflect on their time at Severn. Mr. Roland Marston Teal was born November 7, 1885 in Hackettstown, New Jersey. He attended Lafayette College in Eastern Pennsylvania, and after a stint in the Museum of Natural History in New York, he began his teaching career at school here in Annapolis. Believed the young man needed regular supervision and meals. The then 28-year-old Mr. Teal and his young wife, Susan Ashley Teal, came to what was then called Boone, Maryland in 1914 and established Severn School for the primary purpose of preparing young men for entrance to the United States Naval Academy. Mr. Teal opened the doors of Severn School with one teacher, Mr. Allen Hawkins, 6 students, and a purposeful mission. 1914 also saw the Ford Motor Company announce an 8-hour workday and a minimum wage of $5 per day. Baltimore native Babe Ruth made his major league debut, and in late summer, the guns of August were heard throughout the world as World War I began.
Mr. Teal reflecting on the founding of Severn School. My wife had a little bit of money, and I had a little bit of money, and we pulled it together and started this school. We looked at several places and locations, and decided on this, Boone, Maryland, because it had just what was necessary. A railroad station, a post office, a freight office, telephone exchange, and a couple of grocery stores. So I bought this place where we are now. And here's the part I can never quite understand. I borrowed a little cash to start. My brother, who was in business in New York, took me to a hotel and restaurant supply house, from which I bought a load of kitchen equipment, dishes, etc. on an open account. And in those days, there was no such thing as installment buying. They gave me full credit for them. We got mattresses and pillows from Schuster & Company in Baltimore. I bought some beds and bedroom furniture from Stewart & Company department store in Baltimore, and I bought some classroom chairs and classroom equipment from a firm in Baltimore. 2 banks in Annapolis loaned me quite a bit of money, and I had no security except my life insurance policy, which I had taken out while I was a boy. I look back on that as utterly astounding, how so many people would trust me to that extent. Today, the banks would not be allowed to do that. Why in the world those people were willing to trust me that far, I just can't understand.
In the 20s, enrollment at Severn surged and wrestling, football, and lacrosse were introduced. New dining halls built in 1922 and 3 private homes on Maple Avenue were purchased to provide dorms and classrooms. Naval Academy's entrance requirements shifted, causing Severn to shift to a four-year high school curriculum, preparing boys for admissions to any college in the country, but keeping a very close tie to the academy. The nation was busy getting rich, in a patina of starry-eyed confidence buoyed by good times. Consumers spent heavily, bought on margin, and prayed the bounty would never end.
October 28, 1929. I got my first inclination that something was wrong when the vice president of the Penn Railroad came into my office at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and he handed me $500 in cash and said this may come in handy. He reeled and went out of the door like a shot. The next morning, the banks were all closed. That $500 came in mighty handy to pay some of the help around here. Some of the banks continued to cash treasury checks sent by the parents of Navy and Army juniors at Severn, and that helped out. The bank in Annapolis let us draw enough money to let us meet our payroll for the low-paid employees around the place. One woman in Massachusetts sent us money orders for the payment of the tuition, and they were most helpful, but I wasn't going to accept the jewelry some parents offered me. That would have been wrong. We got by. We got by. It was a ticklish time, I'll assure you, but we weathered it. We had grand cooperation from the parents, good cooperation from one bank in Annapolis. We got by.
And got by they did, but not without a few changes. Day students were added to bolster tuition revenue in 1938 to maintain solvency. Severn changed from a privately owned entity to one that was incorporated as a nonprofit and governed by a board. The 30s were difficult years at Severn and throughout the nation as everyone endured the lingering effects of the Depression.
To the graduates of Severn School, 1936. Many of you are about to enter the naval or military service of your government. This is not a step to be taken lightly. It is a time-honored and patriotic career, but a most exacting one. You must know in advance that you must give more than you will ever receive in a material way, that you will be called upon for true service. Unless you can enter it in that spirit, stay out. But whatever you undertake in life, it must be worth something to others to be worthwhile to you. No man whose motives are purely selfish lives a successful and happy life, no matter how great his acquisitions.
In the years leading up to World War II and through the war years, enrollment at Severn dwindled to crucial levels. Only 5 of the pre-war faculty remained on staff because the rest went off to serve. There was no yearbooks, no sports, and food was rationed. More than a few questioned the school's ability to survive. And Mr. Teal had managed through tough times before, and his ever-steady hand prevailed yet again. While the nation endured significant loss during World War II, per capita, Severn may have suffered the most of any community, having 73 graduates die in World War II.
From Mr. Teal, to a Severn mother who's lost her son at war. It tears one's heart to see the casualty list of old Severn boys circling now. We must all build up something to sustain us while those we love are on the hands of fate, and to give us some of the courage that has been taken from us. Science has proven that no matter is indestructible. How can we doubt that this spirit is indestructible? So then we must live on for those who have gone before us, and know that those who come after us will live on according to our worthiness.
After the war, Severn's enrollment climbed, fueled in part by an influx of postgraduates, many of them were veterans returning to the classroom and boarders from across the country. In the mid-50s, the Naval Academy adopted the SAT for entry to Severn, so Severn no longer prepares students specifically for the Naval Academy entrance test, shifting its curriculum yet again. In 1955, Woods Hall was built, and 7th and 8th grades were added, increasing the enrollment to 130 students. The country also saw a post-war boom marked by economic growth, with an increase in manufacturing and post-war construction. It also saw a beginning of cultural shifts, as reflected in the 1954 landmark decision, Brown versus the Board of Education in Topeka, in which the court declared state laws establishing separate but equal public schools for black and white students to be unconstitutional. Private schools were exempt from this ruling, however.
A letter from Mr. Teal, February 2nd, 1955, to Mrs. A.F. Wilson, 114 Washington Place, New York, New York. My dear Mrs. Wilson, your letter of February 2nd reached me this morning. I'm sorry to have to say that we could not accept Negro students at this time. A fairly large portion of our student body is drawn from Southern states, and it would not be fair to our students, or Negro students, to place the latter in a position that might prove uncomfortable for them. The major objections would come from the parents, rather than from the boys. I do not care to express an opinion as to what other schools might do. It is surely entirely a matter for the individual school. I must disagree with you as to the quality of work done in Negro high schools, so far as those schools are concerned in Maryland. Under present conditions, with the teacher shortage and the wide employment of young, inexperienced teachers to take charge of overcrowded classes in the white high schools. With the constant procession of new teachers, the teaching done in the Negro schools is superior to that done in the white high schools. The Negro teachers are well trained, interested in their work, and have better discipline in the classroom, and do not have as large classes to handle. It should be a great source of satisfaction to Negro and whites alike that this situation exists. Sincerely yours, Roland M. Teal.
The Cold War helped propagate political and social conservatism throughout the 50s, but there was also growing discontent in this country and at Severn, driven by young people's sense of justice and a desire to influence change for the good.
A reflection from a graduate of the class of 1956. In the 50s, Maryland was a sleepy, apolitical place. We were not to make waves. Mostly we didn't. But our sports teams rebelled at the fact that no schools with black students were then permitted to compete with the all-white students of the Maryland Scholastic Association, in which Severn was a member. We thought this was unfair, and said so again and again. We threatened to boycott at MSA sporting events. We made enough of a stink that we were called to Mr. Teal's office. He said that Severn had to make its way in the MSA, for without it, we could not field teams. He asked if we felt strongly enough about this issue, such that it would potentially eliminate sports at Severn. We squirmed. Mr. Teal quietly waited for an answer. We hemmed and hawed and looked at our shoes. Finally, after what seemed like 2 hours, Mr. Teal said, I can mention at one of the MSA meetings next week that I was visited by a courageous and well-meaning group of our best athletes who expressed their strong objection to racial segregation in MSA sports programs. I could then ask if other headmasters had had similar experiences. We could again get it on the agenda to discuss. By the next year, the Maryland Athletic Association, which is now the MIAA, was playing non-member integrated schools.
Mr. Teal retired as head of school at 7 in 1955. He stayed on as a teacher and as chairman of the board of trustees for the next 10 years. He fully retired from 7 in 1965. The 60s and early 70s were a time of significant change in this country. A counterculture revolution about social norms defined these years. The courageous acts on the part of many, Civil Rights Act was passed, which was just one of a host of significant changes in the country during these decades. Severn saw sweeping changes as well. As we learned a few minutes ago, in 1967, Leroy Sparks was the first African-American to attend Severn. In 1971, Severn went co-ed, adding girls in all grades. In 1974, boarding was discontinued, and 6th grade was added in 1978. Buildings were built, curriculum updated, computers added, and enrollment steadily climbed. But there was and is one very important constant through the Severn system.
Mr. Teal reflecting on his years at Severn. One of the chief sources of success at this school was the deep interest that the individual instructors had in the individual boys. We emphasized that in our cataloging and our letters to families. There was rare exceptions, though. There was an instructor who had a fine personality. He had a fine educational background. He was a good teacher, but still the boys hated him. If he gave a boy one demerit, the boy would throw a fit. Mr. Halstead would give them 5 or 10, and they would take them with a smile. I just couldn't understand it. We had a very good student council at the time, and I talked it over. Why is it that you boys get so angry at Mr. X? We, Mr. Teal, we just don't like that guy. Well, tell me why. He's a good teacher, isn't he? Yes, Mr. Teal. He knows his stuff, doesn't he? Yes, Mr. Teal. But why don't you like him? Well, Mr. Teal, we've talked about it among ourselves, and we think that the guy is not interested in us at all. He's only interested in himself.
Please welcome to the stage Mr. John Bodley, who's in his 40th year of incredible service to Severn School.
Good morning. My reflections on 40 years at Severn School. 40 years ago, I had never heard of Severn School. The mid-1970s was a difficult time for the country economically. President Nixon had just stepped down because of Watergate. Gerald Ford was trying to whip double-digit inflation, and we were about to elect Jimmy Carter President of the United States. At this moment, I was looking for a teaching position in a private day school. The University of Pennsylvania Placement Service provided me a listing of a school in Severna Park, Maryland, that was looking for someone to teach U.S. history, European history, and coach football, wrestling, lacrosse. And I thought, that describes me. I turned to one of my roommates who was from Baltimore, St. Paul's graduate, Barry Turner, and asked him if he'd ever heard of Severn School. Oh yeah, he said, my brother went to Severn School. The chances of that. He told me that his brother really liked the faculty, although it had a modest campus. He mentioned that it had a great view of the Severn River. So with his recommendation and directions, I took the train to Baltimore and the 42 bus to Severn Park. My first impression as I turned the corner was that he wasn't kidding when he said that it had a modest campus. I passed what looked like a gym, and then 2 unfinished cinder block buildings, Woods Hall and the dining hall. A tire swing hung from a tree outside the dining hall. I was a little worried. But I turned down Water Street and saw a charming, ivy-covered 3-story building, which I later learned was Teal Hall. Today, a replica of the original Teal Hall rests in the rotunda for all of you to see. That was the moment that I thought I might be interested in winning the position. That and the fact that I did not have a job. I entered Teal Hall, met the headmaster, Jim Donnelly, and the history department chair, Bob Gray, two fabulous people. The rest is history. Those were my first impressions. Today I want to speak of what has changed over the past 40 years and what has remained the same. First, the changes. That is easy. All one has to do is look at aerial photos of Severn School 40 years ago and today to see the truly remarkable changes that have happened over the years. 40 years ago, Severn possessed a humble yet charming presence. The athletic fields were short on grass and long on dirt. I distinctly remember that because my mother-in-law always made me take off my shoes before entering her house because they were covered in dirt. So yes, my friend Harry Turner was right when Severn's campus was modest. Today, we are blessed with a beautiful, complete, well-manicured campus. The area view today would have to be enlarged to capture the Chesapeake campus, because Chesapeake did not exist as a school when I arrived here in 1976. I think it is important to note that this campus did not just appear without the careful planning and leadership of the Board of Trustees and the 4 headmasters that I served under. The trustees carefully selected headmasters that met the needs of the school. Headmasters Donnelly, Shepard, Creedman, and Guard each built upon the successes of their predecessors to build on Rollin Teal's vision of the school on a hill. They put the school on sound financial footing, strengthened and updated the curriculum, improved faculty salaries and professional development, and then the construction dirt began to fly in the late 90s. Now my wife complains about the turf salads from the artificial turf on our kitchen floor. Some things never change. Now, 3 constants that have remained the same. First, the fact has seen colleagues come and go, but the dedication and hard work has always been there. In the history department, Susan Gray, Bob Gray, and Fred Hewitt retired, but were replaced with equally excellent educators like Ricky Sandropoulos and Mark Butler. Or of Hall of Fame football coaches like Coach Baywall and Coach Doyle, who were great mentors to me, as well as educators on the athletic fields. I could go on and on with praise for an outstanding faculty who pass on their passion in the classrooms, on the stage, and on the athletic fields. Second, the students remain the heart and soul of the school. I am constantly amazed and impressed that when I teach a history class, it's an hour of history. When I teach economics, it's an hour of economics. There are no real discipline problems here. Sure, tail out here and there, but the students genuinely come to learn. I could not believe how hard my little 7th graders worked in the late 70s. My Fed Challenge economics team used to meet every day, 8 to 10 hours a day, the entire spring break, to discuss monetary policy. Where else did this happen? Just last week, adults at the Severn St. Mary's football game were amazed at the outstanding behavior of our student families after the victory. After the game, they sat quietly in the middle of the field with the football team, waiting for the head football coach to address them, as though they were part of the team. You cannot teach this, and yet this is the type of young person drawn to the Severn community since I've been here. This is what makes Severn different from any other school. I could speak for days about all the outstanding young people that I have taught or coached. To single out one name would be an injustice to the many names. Third, the mission of the school is also a constant. Character, conduct, scholarship. Mr. Rollin Teal placed these words on the Severn diploma many years ago. Those words are spelled out in the mission statement on the wall of the new Teal Academic Center. That mission remains the same. Note the character comes first. So yes, the campus looks different, much different. Yes, pencils, blackboards, mimeograph machines, overhead projectors, and slide rules have been replaced with computers, iPads, whiteboards, and ceiling projectors. But we have visionary leaders, a passionate faculty, and fabulous young students who will be the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you.
Please welcome Kathy Carper, who's in her 30th birthday.
Good morning. My family moved to Severna Park, Maryland in 1977. My father had just accepted a position at the Severn School as athletic director and history teacher. A few months later, my mother joined the staff and became the administrative assistant to the assistant headmaster, a position that no longer exists. We were coming from a small country in Europe. My father had been the athletic director at an international school in Antwerp, Belgium. So this was a big adjustment for my sisters and me as we were going through a big culture shock being back in the States. Everything seemed so fast-paced here. As we walked the campus for the first time, I noticed a door lying on the ground covering a huge mud puddle. People were walking across it as if it were a bridge. Looking back as an adult, Severn at the time was physically a little bit of a mess. As an incoming 9th grader, I just thought it was a shabby chic way of doing things. During our first year, we lived in a tiny apartment on the top of the dining hall while my parents explored the area and looked for a house. It was a tiny apartment for a family of 6, but my sisters and I did not care. We would just climb out on the flat roof with our lawn chairs to do homework or play dodgeball or foursquare. The dining hall was located where the learning cottages used to be. And below the dining hall were middle school classrooms and a huge multi-purpose room. And it was there that I held my first performance when I came back to teach in the arts. My freshman year was Mr. Bodley's second year, and I remember sitting in his classroom in Woods Hall, which was located by the gym. I remember taking one of his tests and having no idea how to answer one of the essay questions. So to kill time, I created an elaborate fairy tale and wrote it down instead of answering the question. Much to my horror, he was so amused that he read it out loud to the class. I received a very low score and soon realized that Severn's academic standards were challenging, and if I did not prepare, I would not last long here. 1978 was the year Severn added the 6th grade. We were so charmed by these little people running around the campus that I'm convinced that's one of the reasons why I chose to teach 6th grade in the middle school. In 1979, my sophomore year, we said goodbye to Severn's founding father, Mr. Roland Marshall Teal. He passed away October 16th, and his memorial service was held at the Naval Academy with a reception in Severn's library. My parents became quite friendly with Mr. Teal's son, Richard. He lived in the big house on the corner, and my parents were often invited over. My dad, an ice hockey player, would go skating with Richard on the Severn River when it was frozen. Traveling from class to class was a hike as we traveled from building to building. I'm not sure how we did it in the 5 minutes we had to get from class to class. History was in Woods Hall, language in the ivy-covered Teal building, and English and science and math were in what we called the dorm. These were classrooms that were once the boys' dormitory rooms when it was a boarding school. I remember some of the boys bringing their skateboards, but that was soon nixed when one of the older teachers was almost run over walking to class. Severn's signature building was known as Teal Hall. It was made of brick and it was very beautiful, but not that well constructed. Some said that the ivy that covered it held it up, and I could attest to that as one weekend my sisters and I climbed the ivy to Madame Umanicki's classroom, which was on the 3rd floor. I was so sad when this beautiful building came down in 1983. Improvements were being made to the dorm, and that then became the new Teal academic building. My 4 years at Severn went by very quickly, and I was busy in the classrooms, playing field hockey, lacrosse, and being a cheerleader. I'd love to tell you that I was a 4-year varsity letter lacrosse player, and I was. It was just that the girls only had one team. The varsity football team, my senior year, remained undefeated and won the Tri-County Crown Championship, and that was a very big deal. I graduated from Severn in 1981 and pursued a degree in dance. I graduated in 1985 from Mercer's College and came back to the Annapolis area to teach dance and coach lacrosse at Annapolis High School. It was then that the middle school division head, Louise Williams, Williams asked me to come to Severn and start a dance program in the middle school. I also coached the girls' field hockey and lacrosse teams. Following year, I became full-time when I became part of the history department. The years passed by quickly as my passion for teaching grew. Developing relationships with my students in the classroom, out on the field, and on the stage has been very exciting and very rewarding. I've watched Severn physically change over the years. When Headmaster Bill Creedon came to Severn, the dining hall and Woods Hall came down, and Cleary, the Creedon Hall, and the gym shortly arrived. I became a Severn parent when my daughter Kelsey arrived in 2002, and my son Shane followed in her footsteps in 2005. They are both graduates of Severn School, and their names, along with mine and my sister's, are proudly displayed in the rotunda of our new Teal Academic Center. Under the direction of our current headmaster, Mr. Doug Lagarde, we have 2 campuses in our pre-K through 12th grade school. While there have been many changes at Severn during the time I've been here, there's one thing that has not changed, and that's you, the people that make Severn the special place that it is. In good times and in bad, Severn stands together as a community. It touches my heart to see this, and this is why I call Severn home.
Teal grew, improved, and adapted Severn while nurturing a principled foundation based on a simple yet profound philosophy, character, conduct, and scholarship. Today, Severn stands as a co-ed day school with 845 students in grades preschool through 12 on 2 campuses. Throughout its transformation, Severn has responded to the changing educational landscape while simultaneously maintaining the timeless aspects of Mr. Teal's time as principal. We're going to conclude this morning's assembly with 2 speakers. The first is Cece Lastly, who's a senior. Cece.
Good morning. I have been asked to reflect upon my Severn experience as a senior and as someone who has been a part of the greater Severn community for a long time. Much of the Severn experience is modeled after key words in the mission statement: character, conduct, scholarship, and leadership. Although these pillars are often seen as the most important part of the mission statement, I think that the best part of the Severn experience does not come from one of these words, but from the idea that each student is known and valued. I originally thought that my Severn experience started in 6th grade, but when Chesapeake Academy merged with Severn, I found that my Severn experience actually started in 3-year-old preschool. Even though Chesapeake Academy was a separate school when I went there, the ideals of Severn's mission statement have resonated throughout my experience on both campuses. In the nurturing environment of Chesapeake Academy, I was introduced to the basic skills of learning and how to make scholarship something other than a chore. As the saying above the doors stated, elementary school opened the doors to a life of learning. One of the most important lessons that lower school taught us was not academic, but how to respect and embrace each other's differences. In the early years of lower school, we also had nap time, something I know many juniors and seniors would now appreciate a lot more. With that foundation, I was ready to take on the challenges and opportunities of the Teal campus. Here we continue to work on the character traits introduced at the Chesapeake campus: fair play, honesty, and respect. In the upper school, the honor code gives us a more tangible structure for achieving these ideals. We as students are given many opportunities to express ourselves in leadership roles through our extracurriculars. While our sports teams continue to excel, congratulations to the football team for winning River Classic this past weekend, the soccer team for beating St. Mary's and making it to the conference finals, and the tennis team for their great finish in the MIAA tournament. The arts, clubs, and other student organizations, such as the Community Service Committee, are slowly gaining prominence. I hope that these more creative and academic activities continue to gain support. Rigorous academics have always been an integral part of the Severn experience on both campuses. Students are encouraged to challenge themselves and to experience new subjects and modes of thinking in both the state-of-the-art Teal Academic Center and the unique opportunities such as the Malone School's online network program. Severn's crowning achievement is not in its facilities, nice as they are, or as in its many student different organizations and events, but it's amazing teachers who truly know and value their students. Throughout my time at Southern, my teachers have made an effort to make me feel known and valued in every class. They challenged me to push my limits and exceed my expectations for myself. At the same time, they are there to support me in my efforts. As illustrated by Mr. Stark's experience, all communities must continue to work on knowing and valuing their members and others for who they are. Members of our community are working to improve the acceptance of differences through clubs, speakers like Ms. Rosetta Lee, assemblies, and days of awareness. We have made significant progress in the nearly 50 years since Mr. Sparks first enrolled at Southern, but we have a ways to go. Knowing and valuing others for who they are is a goal on which we, as members of the global, national, and Southern communities, can always improve. Just as the Southern community is evolving, I have grown throughout my experience at Southern. Over the past 15 years, the greater Southern community has given me solid foundations in character, conduct, scholarship, and leadership. I hope to continue to grow towards these standards, and most of all, in knowing and valuing others in college and beyond. Thank you very much.
And now please welcome 7th grader Daniel Beverly.
Good morning, students, grandparents, and faculty. I am here to talk about what I hope Southern will be like when I graduate, and what I feel could be changed about Southern. From a middle school student's point of view, a typical Southern day is 6 academic classes, sandwiched in between is flex time and lunch. After those classes are electives and physical activities. A typical year for a 6th grader is a fun-filled, memory-making experience that consists of field trips, socials, and field day. What is the problem with this? What needs improvement? The answer is interaction. Not with peers, but with the whole Southern community. There is too much separation in the Southern community. We are divided by the imaginary line of lower school, middle school, and high school. Southern is one community. I believe we should act accordingly. I hope we could break the boundary between the 3 sections of the school. We need more interaction for it to be connected as one community. The more experienced high schoolers can pass on their knowledge and study skills and to the middle school. The middle school could teach the lower school tips to help with the transition to 6th grade. This way, we can help cultivate the younger ones. They are the future of Southern. Although it is already known, I feel the need to remind us that the Southern community also consists of teachers and parents. Every day, our teachers cultivate the mindset that they are here to help the children get ready for the next level. For every event, parents think about what they can bring to the table. Both groups help and support us. What I hope will be greatly developed is appreciation and gratitude. Appreciation means to recognize the full world. Gratitude means the quality of being grateful. You must develop a demeanor of growth. To do this, we don't have to do anything extravagant like riding a car. Little things are what count. When you see your teachers in the morning, a simple good morning and a how are you can do a lot to brighten up their day. When you leave their classroom, saying thank you can easily motivate them to do more for you and work harder to make their academic life easier for you. The same thing applies to the parents. Saying thank you after every event will goad them to participate and support us even more. Technology advances. I hope that when I graduate, Southern would have advanced in technology. We're very on our way with iPads and such. However, the key topic is distraction. We cannot let technology distract us from our goals. Technology is a very handy tool. With the right intent, we can use it to achieve great things. As we advance with it, the best thing to do is not let it affect us drastically. Let's be safe with technology and use it to help and entertain us, not destroy us. I hope Southern can advance with technology at the same time maintain the criteria. Excuse me for my tone in this speech. It makes it seem that there are a lot of areas Southern is lacking. In actuality, there are a lot more things I hope will never change. Our awareness towards the world around us is an extremely good quality. Our ability to work together and achieve a greater goal, like the SEAL building, will get us far. Our determination to succeed academically and physically will help us in our future struggles. A competitive spirit is a useful thing to have. Our strive to help those around us and reach out to our community is the best trait of all. If you have an abundant amount of something, why not give back? These traits are what make Severn the school it is today. Severn is a great school. And every year, it creates more students who pursue excellence in character, conduct, and scholarship, marshal the cards to lead, and have developed a lasting desire to achieve and succeed. I hope we stick to this mission and always change for the better. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.
In Mr. Teal's last formal address to students, he said the following. So in conclusion, as I say farewell to Severn, I ask you to consider, no matter what our age, there are times when we look back and think about and talk about the years that have passed. And almost invariably, the starting point in our thinking, our reminiscing, is our high school or prep days. It is quite natural for life begins really not at 40, but at 14 or 15 or 16, when we become conscious of the fact that we are growing up. Keep constantly in mind that education is fundamentally a process through which we live. Mr. Teal had a fervent desire to establish Severn as a leading school, and one which, in his own words, would not become just a run-of-the-mill secondary school, but one in which young people can come with feeling that they can get something here that they can't get elsewhere. I firmly believe that Mr. Teal will be very, very proud of the school we are today. Thank you, Mr. Teal, for your vision, for your words of wisdom, and for your dedication to the teaching life. Your legacy is in full.